A woman sees her missing daughter's bracelet in a TikTok video, 12 years after she vanished. The stale, recycled air of the apartment tasted of dust and defeat. It was the same taste that had coated Sarah's tongue for 12 years, a flavor she had come to associate with the silence of a home that was once filled with the chaotic symphony of a 7-year-old girl. 2:48 a.m. The blue-white light of her phone was a harsh, unforgiving spotlight on her face, carving new shadows into the familiar landscape of her exhaustion. Her thumb, an automaton with a mind of its own, swiped upwards, again and again, through the endless flickering void of TikTok. A river of meaningless joy and manufactured drama. A digital anesthetic for a pain that had no name. She didn't know why she did this to herself every night. Each video was a tiny paper cut on her soul-smiling families. Dancing teenagers, girls growing up, celebrating proms and graduations and lives that her Lily would never have. It was a masochistic ritual, a way to punish herself for the one unforgivable sign, surviving. A new video flickered onto the screen. Upbeat, generic pop music pulsed from the tiny speakers. A girl, no older than 20, with hair the color of bubblegum and eyes ringed in impossibly thick black liner, beamed into the camera. "Hey guys, welcome back to Starlight Steph's thrift haul. You will not believe the vintage gems I snagged today." Sarah's thumb hovered, ready to swipe, to banish this saccharine creature from her sight. But something stayed her hand. The girl, Steph, giggled, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane, and held up a tangled mess of jewelry to the camera. "Okay, so first up, this super cute Y2K stuff. It's totally giving Brittany and Justin at the AMAs right," she began, to untangle the pieces, her long acrylic nails clicking against the cheap metal. A mood ring, a yin-yang choker, a butterfly clip that still had a strand of someone else's hair caught in it. And then, time didn't just slow down, it shattered. The generic pop music seemed to warp, melting into a low demonic drone. The air in the room thickened, pressing in on Sarah, stealing the oxygen from her lungs. Her heart, a sluggish, tired muscle, gave a violent lurch, slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. On the screen, dangling from starlight, perfectly manicured fingers, was a small, silver chain bracelet. It was delicate, almost lost in the glare of her ring light. But Sarah would have recognized it in the deepest abyss, in the blackest heart of a starless night. It was Lily's, the charm bracelet. The one they had designed together for her 7th birthday. A tiny crescent moon, meticulously carved, a fat, smiling sun, and in the middle, a single 5-pointed star, with a microscopic chip of sapphire Lily's birthstone embedded in its center. "My whole sky, Mummy," Lily had called it. The sun for daytime, the moon for nighttime, and a star for when you're sleeping. "So I'm always with you." Starlight Steph held it closer to the lens, her voice a distant, tinny echo from a world that had suddenly ceased to exist for Sarah. "And how adorable is this little thing? It's kinda tarnished, and the clasp is broken, but I can totally fix that. It's got this cute little sun, and a moon, and a star. Super celestial. I'm thinking it'll look amazing stacked with my Cartier." The breath Sarah had been holding escaped in a ragged, guttural sob that was torn from the deepest, most primal part of her. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated agony, the sound of a wound 12 years old being ripped open with brutal, careless force. Her phone slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering onto the cheap laminate floor. The video kept playing. The girl's cheerful voice chattering on about faux leather pants and a vintage band T. Sarah scrambled for it, her movements clumsy, her body shaking with a violence that terrified her. Her hand, slick with a sudden cold sweat, fumbled with the phone. She needed to see it again. She needed to be sure. But her thumb, slick and trembling, swiped wrong. The video vanished. "No," she whimpered, the word a small, broken thing in the oppressive silence. "No. She clawed at the screen, her fingers tapping frantically, trying to refresh, to go back, to find that face, that voice, that bracelet. But the algorithm had already moved on. A new video appeared, a cat playing a tiny piano. Then a recipe for feta pasta. Then a man dancing, pointing at text bubbles, revealing his toxic dating story. It was gone, lost in the digital tsunami. No. The word was a scream this time, raw and shredded. She threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a sickening crack and skittered under the sagging armchair. Its light finally extinguished. She was left in the dark, alone with the ghost of a silver bracelet dancing behind her eyelids. The details seared into her memory. With the heat of a branding iron, the specific way the sun charm was slightly dented on one of its rays. Lily had dropped it on the pavement the day she got it. The faint, dark tarnish in the crevices of the moon, exactly where a child's grubby fingers would have polished the high points and left the rest to age. The broken clasp, a tiny metal loop that had snapped. Sarah remembered the day it broke. A week before Lily had been so upset, crying because she couldn't wear her whole sky. Sarah had promised to take it to the jeweler the next day. But there was no next day. The next day there was only a pink bicycle lying on its side in the driveway, a half-eaten bowl of Cheerios on the kitchen table, an open front door, swinging gently in the autumn breeze, and a silence that grew and grew until it filled every corner of the house, of their lives, of the world. 12 years of police interviews, of smudged, photocopied flyers with Lily's gap-toothed smile. 12 years of psychics and cranks and well-meaning friends who told her she needed to find closure. 12 years of staring at other people's children. Her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. 12 years of keeping Lily's room exactly as she had left it, the indentation of her head still a faint shadow on the pillow. A shrine to a ghost dot, and now, this, a careless, smiling girl with bubblegum hair, holding Sarah's entire universe in her hand and calling it a vintage gem. A wave of nausea and vertigo washed over Sarah. She stumbled to her feet, her legs unsteady, and lurched toward the wall, her hands slapping against the peeling paint to keep her upright. The injustice of it was a physical force, a poison flooding her veins. That bracelet wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a relic. It was the last tangible piece of her daughter. It was proof that Lily had existed, that she had been loved, that she was more than just a case file number and a faded photograph on a dusty bulletin board. And it was out there, on the wrist of a stranger who had no idea of the sacred ground she was trampling. Who was she? This Starlight Steph. Where did she get it? A thrift store, she'd said. Which one? In what city? In what state? The questions swarmed Sarah's mind like angry hornets. For 12 years, the trail had been ice cold. The police had interviewed every registered sex offender in a 50-mile radius. They had dredged lakes. They had followed hundreds of bogus tips that led to heartbreaking dead ends. They had found nothing. Not a thread, not a footprint, not a witness. Until now, this wasn't a bogus tip from a psychic. This wasn't a vague, blurry CCTV image. This was the bracelet. It was real. She had seen it. The despair that had been her constant companion for over a decade began to recede, burned away by a ferocious, white-hot rage. It was an emotion so powerful, so pure, it felt like coming alive again. Hope, she realized with a jolt, was not a gentle, feathered thing. It was a feral animal with claws and teeth, and it was sinking its teeth into her. She had to find that video. She lurched back across the room, dropping to her hands and knees and frantically patting the floor under the armchair. Her fingers brushed against the shattered screen of her phone. She pulled it out. It was dead, useless. A strangled sob of frustration caught in her throat. She looked around the tiny apartment, her eyes wild. The laptop. Her old, slow dinosaur of a laptop. She scrambled to the small desk, piled high with junk mail and old magazines. She shoved them aside, sending papers fluttering to the floor. She found the power cord, her hands shaking so badly it took her tries to plug it into the wall. The machine whirred to life with a groan, the fan kicking in like a tiny asthmatic engine. Each second of the boot-up screen was an eternity of agony. Come Come on, come on. Finally, the desktop appeared. She clicked open the web browser, her heart pounding a frantic, desperate rhythm against her ribs. She typed TikTok into the search bar. She didn't have an account on her laptop, but she could browse as a guest. The site loaded. A cacophony of sound and color erupted from the speakers. But it wasn't the endless, mindless scroll of the app. It was a curated page of trending videos. How could she find one specific video, one face, among billions? Her mind raced, grasping for a detail. The username. What was the username? Her brain, fogged with shock and sleeplessness, struggled to retrieve the information. Starlight, something. Starlight, Steph. Yes. That was it. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing Starlight Steph into the search bar on the TikTok site. She hit enter. The page refreshed. And there she was. Dozens of thumbnails, all with the same pink-haired, beaming face. The profile picture showed her blowing a kiss. A shower of glittery star filters around her head. The bio read, "Just a girl trying to make the world a little brighter." 1.7 M. Followers. Sarah's breath hitched. 1.7 million. A private army of strangers who loved this girl who had her daughter's bracelet. She clicked on the first video. It was a dance challenge. Steph, in a crop top and ridiculously baggy jeans, moved with a fluid, practiced ease. Sarah's eyes weren't on her dancing. They were locked on her wrist. No bracelet. She clicked the next video. A tutorial on how to achieve the perfect e-girl eyeliner. Again, bare wrists. Next. A video about her favorite snacks from Trader Joe's. A lip sync to a scene from a popular TV show. A video of her cat, a fluffy white Persian, wearing a tiny sombrero. With each click, a sliver of Sarah's hope died. Where was it? The thrift haul video. It had to be recent. She'd said today. She scrolled down, her eyes scanning the dates. Yesterday, 2 days ago, a week. She went through every single video posted in the last month. It wasn't there. No, Sarah whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. It was there. I saw. It. Had she imagined it? Was this what it felt like to finally, truly lose her mind? Had 12 years of grief finally curdled her brain, making her see ghosts in the machine? The thought was a cold spike of terror. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to summon the image again. The pink hair, the black eyeliner, the cheap jewelry, the way the light caught the dent on the sun charm. It was too real, too specific. She opened her eyes, her gaze falling on the profile again. Starlight Steph. Maybe she had deleted it. Why? Did someone else recognize it? Did someone comment, and she got scared? Or was it something else? Did she simply decide the video was off-brand and remove it? The helplessness was suffocating. It was right there. The first real clue in 4,380 days, and it had vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Sarah leaned forward, her forehead resting on the cool, dusty surface of the desk. A single hot tear dripped from her eye onto the keyboard. It was over. It was just another false dawn, another cruel trick played by a universe that had taken everything from her and kept coming back for more. But then, another thought pierced through the fog. The comments, the DMs. Even if the video was gone, maybe someone else had seen it. Maybe someone had commented on it. And maybe, just maybe, this Starlight Steph had an Instagram, a Twitter, another digital footprint where a clue might remain. The rage returned. A low, steady burn. She was not going to let this go. She had spent 12 years in the dark. A flicker of light, no matter how faint, was enough. She would tear the internet apart with her bare hands if she had to. She would find this girl, and she would get her daughter's bracelet back. She straightened up, her spine stiffening. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen, a woman she barely recognized, hollowed out by grief, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes holding the ancient sorrow of 1,000 sleepless nights. But tonight, for the first time in a long, long time, there was something else in those eyes. A glint of steel, a spark of war. The cliffhanger wasn't that the video was gone. The cliffhanger was the birth of the woman Sarah was about to become. She was no longer just a grieving mother. She was a hunter, and her prey had a name: Starlight Steph. Sarah's life was a museum of sorrow, each room a different exhibit of her loss. The living room, with its sagging armchair and stacks of cold case files, was the research wing. The kitchen, where she microwaved solitary meals and stared out the window at the empty swing set in the yard, was the hall of unending silence. And upstairs, behind a closed door, was the main exhibit, Lily's room. It was preserved under a fine layer of dust, a perfect, heartbreaking time capsule from that last Tuesday morning. A stuffed unicorn named Sp lay on the pillow, a half-finished drawing of their family, a stick figure, Sarah, stick figure mark, and a vibrant, smiling Lily with a huge yellow sun drawn above her head was still taped to the wall. For 12 years, Sarah had been the sole curator of this museum, a ghost haunting the ghost of her own life. Her ex-husband, Mark, had chosen a different path. He had chosen to live. After the first 2 years of frenetic, shared panic, their grief had diverged. Sarah's had calcified, becoming a hard, protective shell. Mark's had dissolved into a desperate need for normalcy. He'd pleaded with her to pack up Lily's room, to see a therapist who didn't specialize in ambiguous loss, to try and have another child. "We can't let this destroy us, Sarah," he'd said, his voice strained with a grief she felt he was trying to outrun. "We have to move on." To Sarah, moving on felt like a betrayal. It felt like agreeing that Lily was truly gone. Their arguments became chasms, their shared sorrow a wall between them instead of a bridge. He moved out in the 5th year. He remarried in the 7th. He now had 2 young sons with a woman named Brenda, a cheerful, well-adjusted woman who had never known the specific horror of an open front door and a half-eaten bowl of cereal. Sarah saw pictures on Facebook sometimes. Mark, smiling at a backyard barbecue, his new sons climbing on him. He looked happy. He looked free. She hated him for it, and she hated herself for hating him. Then there was Detective Frank Miller. In the beginning, he had been a lifeline. A large, rumpled man with kind, sad eyes who looked at Sarah not as a hysterical mother or a broken victim, but as a partner in the search. He had been the lead on Lily's case for the first 3 years. He'd given her his personal cell number. He'd sat in her kitchen, drinking lukewarm coffee. Long after his shifts had ended, going over the same scant details again and again. As if sheer force of will could conjure a new clue, he believed her when she said Lily wouldn't have gone with a stranger. He held her hand when another false lead crumbled to dust. But his dedication had been his undoing. His superiors saw his involvement as unprofessional. They said he was too close, his judgment clouded. They pulled him from the case, citing emotional burnout, and handed it over to a slick, ambitious detective who treated Sarah with a detached, clinical pity that was infinitely more painful than Miller's shared grief. Miller retired a year later, a man defeated by the one case he couldn't solve. They still spoke sometimes, on Lily's birthday and the anniversary of her disappearance. He'd call, his voice gravelly with age and whiskey, and they would share a few minutes of remembered pain, before retreating back into their separate silences. The call to Miller was the first one she made after her laptop failed her. She found his number in an old dog-eared address book, her fingers tracing the familiar indentations of the ink. It was nearly 4 a.m., but she knew he'd be awake. The ghosts of his unsolved cases were probably his most constant companions. He answered. On the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Miller, Frank, it's Sarah, Sarah Jensen." There was a pause, the sound of him sitting up, of the world snapping into focus. "Sarah, what's wrong? Are you okay?" His voice was instantly alert, the old cop instincts kicking in. "I saw it." "Frank," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I saw her bracelet." "Her bracelet?" he asked slowly, cautiously. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "Lily's bracelet, the sun, moon, and star. I saw it. On the internet, a girl was wearing it." She could hear the shift in his tone, the gentle placating note he used to use on witnesses in shock. "Okay, Sarah, slow down. Tell me exactly what you saw. She recounted the story, her voice shaking, trying to keep the hysteria at bay, trying to sound like a credible witness. The TikTok video, the pink-haired girl, the thrift haul, the broken clasp, the dented son. She gave him every detail she could remember. When she finished, the silence on the other end of the line was heavy. Starlight Steph. Miller repeated slowly, the name sounding absurd and foreign in his gravelly voice. And the video is gone. She must have deleted it. But Frank, it was the bracelet. I'm not crazy. I'm not imagining it. I never said you were, Sarah, he said, his voice firm. Okay. Here's what we do. Don't try to contact this girl. Don't comment, don't send her messages, nothing. You said she has a lot of followers. The last thing we want to do is spook her. If she has any idea that Bracelet is connected to a major crime, she'll get rid of it. Understand? So what? We do nothing? Sarah asked, the frustration rising. No, we do this, smart. I still have some friends on the force, and I know a few guys who are wizards with this internet stuff. We can try to get a subpoena for the tech company's data. See if we can recover the deleted video. Find out who this girl is, where she lives. We build a case before we ever approach her. He paused. Sarah. This is the first real lead in 12 years. We can't afford to mess it up by going in half-cocked. You have to trust me. Trust him, she did. But patience felt like an impossible price to pay. Every second that passed was another second that the bracelet, that piece of Lily's soul, was in the hands of that bad girl. And who was she? As Miller began to make his calls, Sarah fell down the rabbit hole of Starlight Steph's digital life. She found her Instagram, her YouTube, her Twitter. It was a curated empire of pastel colors and shallow positivity. World was one of brand sponsorships, of unboxing videos, of perfectly filtered selfies with captions full of inspirational quotes about living your best life. She lived in a sleek, minimalist apartment that looked like a furniture showroom, with a fluffy white cat named Marshmallow. Her fans adored her. They called themselves her starlights. They flooded her comments with heart emojis and praise. You're such an inspiration, Steph. Your positivity saved my life. Queen of aesthetics. Sarah scrolled through years of photos, a voyeuristic journey through a life of effortless privilege. Trips to Bali, VIP passes to music festivals, expensive handbags nonchalantly placed on cafe tables. There was no sign of a past, no mention of family, no throwback photos from a less-than-perfect childhood. Starlight Steph seemed to have sprung into existence fully formed, a perfect, marketable product. But the more Sarah watched, the more she saw the cracks in the facade. The smiles in Steph's videos never quite reached her eyes. There was a hardness there, a glint of something cold and sharp beneath the glitter. In one video, a Q&A with my followers, a fan asked a seemingly innocent question: what was your high school experience like? Steph's bubbly demeanor faltered for a fraction of a second. Her smile tightened. Oh, you know, she said, forcing a laugh. It was, whatever. High school is so lame. I was like, totally not into the whole clique thing. I was more of a lone wolf. I couldn't wait to get out of my boring small town and actually start my life, you know? She quickly changed the subject, launching into a story about a comical wardrobe malfunction at a recent red carpet event. But Sarah had seen it. The flicker of revulsion. The mention of a boring small town, a seed of an idea, dark and terrifying, began to plant itself in her mind. A few days later, Miller called back. His voice was grim. We hit a wall, he said. The frustration. Evident the tech company is fighting the subpoena. They're citing user privacy. It could take months to get a judge to force their hand. Months. Sarah felt the hope drain out of her. Frank, we don't have months. She could sell it, lose it, throw it away. It could be gone by then. I know, Sarah, I'm pushing. But there's something else. My guy did some digging on the username, Starlight Steph. Her real name is Stephanie O'Connell. She's 29. Miller paused, and Sarah knew, with a sudden, chilling certainty, what he was going to say next. She was born and raised in Northwood. Northwood, the same small, sleepy town where Sarah and Mark had raised Lily. The same town where the pink bicycle was found lying on its side. The world tilted on its axis. No, Sarah breathed. She was 17 when Lily disappeared, Miller continued, his voice low. Lived in a broken-down house over on the south side with a mother who had a rap sheet for petty theft and a string of abusive boyfriends. Stephanie, or Steph as she was known back then, was a problem kid. Truancy, shoplifting. Nothing major, but she was on our radar. She was a loner, angry. Dropped out of high school a year after Lily vanished and left town. No one's heard from her since. Sarah's mind was reeling, trying to connect the dots. A troubled 17-year-old girl, simmering with resentment, living just a few miles from their happy, stable home. A girl who described herself as a lone wolf who couldn't wait to escape. Did you interview her at the time? Sarah asked, her voice a reedy whisper. She wasn't on the list, Miller said, and the guilt in his voice was palpable. We were focused on male predators. The profile didn't fit. No one even thought to look at a teenage girl. It wasn't a random thrift store find. It couldn't be. The statistical impossibility of it was staggering. This girl, this Starlight Steph, had been there. She had breathed the same air as Lily. She had walked the same streets. And for 12 years she had kept that bracelet. The image of smiling, filtered face filled Sarah's mind, but now it was grotesque. A monstrous mask hiding an unimaginable secret. The broken past wasn't just Sarah's or Miller's. It was Stephanie O'Connell's too. And her secret, Sarah was now terrifyingly sure, was wrapped around the last piece of Lily's soul. The hidden witness wasn't just a retired cop anymore. The hidden witness was a memory, locked away in the mind of a girl who had built a new life on top of a very old grave. The dam of Sarah's patience, already cracked, finally burst, waiting for a judge, for a piece of paper. While that girl paraded her daughter's memory around like a fashion accessory, was no longer an option. Miller's warnings about spooking her became a distant echo, drowned out by the roaring in Sarah's ears. This was no longer a police investigation for her. It was a pilgrimage. It was a mother's war. Her first salvo was clumsy, a digital scream into the void. She created a burner account on TikTok, a faceless profile with a nonsensical username. Under one of Starlight Steph's recent videos, a tutorial on how to make a vision board. For the new year, Sarah left a comment. Where did you get the silver charm bracelet? She checked her phone every 30 seconds, her heart hammering. Hours passed. The comment was buried under an avalanche of fawning praise. It was like throwing a pebble into the ocean. She tried again, more pointedly. The silver bracelet with the sun, moon, and star. The one from your thrift haul video. That you deleted? Where did you get it? This time she got a response, not from Steph, but from one of her at user 894-37291. She said, a thrift store. Duh. Stop being a weirdo. The injustice was a physical blow. A weirdo. That's what she was. A grieving mother, stripped of her name, her story, reduced to a string of numbers, and a desperate question. Fueled by a fresh wave of rage, she replied, my daughter, who has been missing for 12 years, had a bracelet exactly like that. I need to know where she got it. It's important. She posted the same message again and again, on every platform she could find. Instagram comments, Twitter replies, YouTube. It was a digital siege, a one-woman army against a fortress of curated indifference. For 2 days, there was nothing. Then, it happened. Steph went live on Instagram, announcing a surprise chat with her followers. Sarah joined the stream, her hands trembling. Steph was in her pristine white apartment, sitting on a plush pink rug, Marshmallow, the cat, curled in her lap. She was answering vapid questions about her haircare routine and her favorite vegan protein powder. Then, she paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as she read a comment off her screen. A small, cruel smile played on her lips. Oh my God, you guys, she said, rolling her eyes with theatrical flair. The bracelet lady is here. The chat feed exploded. Sarah's blood ran cold. Okay, so, we need to talk about this, Steph said, leaning into the camera, her voice dripping with mock concern. There's this woman who has been blowing up my comments for days, asking about this little bracelet I bought. Apparently, she thinks it belonged to her long-lost daughter or something. It's super tragic, I'm sure, but, girl, she let out a short, sharp laugh. It's a piece of junk jewelry from a thrift store, I think. I paid 50 cents for it. She held up her wrist. There it was. Lily's bracelet. Dented sun, tarnished moon, sapphire star. It was nestled amongst a stack of other expensive-looking gold and diamond bracelets. It looked small, and sad, and utterly out of place. I feel for her, I really do, Steph continued, stroking her cat, the picture of condescending sympathy. But you can't just go around accusing people of, what? Having your daughter's stuff. It's a little unhinged, don't you think? She looked directly into the camera, her eyes cold and hard despite the smile on her face. To the woman who keeps harassing me, I'm so sorry for your loss, truly, but you need to get some help. And please, for the love of God, stop spamming my accounts. You're scaring me and my followers. It's giving stalker vibes. The humiliation was absolute. It was a public execution. The chat feed flew by in a blur of vitriol, all aimed at Sarah. Oh my God, leave her alone. What a psycho. Steph, you handle haters with so much grace. Someone get this Karen a hobby. Sarah felt the air leave her body. This was worse than being ignored. This was a public branding. Steph hadn't just dismissed her. She had weaponized her own grief against her, painting her as a crazy, obsessed stalker to an audience of nearly 2 million people. She had taken Sarah's private agony and turned it into content, and then came the doxing. Within an hour, one of Steph's rabid fans, some tech-savvy teenager with too much time on their hands, had somehow connected her burner accounts to her real Facebook profile. Her name, her photo, her tragic storyette was all posted in a fan forum. Her phone began to light up with notifications. Friend requests from cruel strangers. Messages calling her a liar, a freak, a pathetic old woman trying to get attention by glomming onto a celebrity. Someone posted her home address. A pizza she didn't order showed up at her door. She called Miller, sobbing, barely able to speak. He was furious. This is witness intimidation, Sarah. This is a crime. But they both knew the truth. The anonymous trolls were ghosts, untraceable, and the damage was done. That night, something in Sarah snapped. The fear, the humiliation, it all burned away, leaving behind only a cold, hard resolve. Miller's way wasn't working. The law was too slow, too civilized for a battle like this. She had been wronged, and now she was being hunted. Fine, she would hunt back. She packed a small overnight bag, her movements precise and deliberate. She took the last printed photo she had of Lily, the one from her second-grade school picture, and put it in her purse. She got in her car, a 10-year-old sedan that rattled when it went over 60, and she started driving. Using the information Miller's contact had found, she had an address. Steph O'Connell lived in a luxury apartment building in a city 6 hours away. Sarah didn't know what she would do when she got there. She had no plan. She was just a homing pigeon, drawn by an unbreakable magnetic pull toward the last known location of her daughter's soul. The drive was a blur of highway lights and talk radio. With every mile, the fear receded and the rage solidified. The antagonist had grown bolder, more cruel. Steph wasn't just an unwitting holder of a lost item anymore. Her public mockery, her casual smiling cruelty, it felt personal. It felt like a taunt. The way she wore the bracelet, flaunting it, stacking it with her expensive jewelry, felt like a deliberate act of desecration. It was a constant, glittering reminder of what Sarah had lost and what this girl had, for some unknowable reason, kept as she drove through the night. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Lily, sitting on the floor, her small hands struggling to work the clasp on the new bracelet. "It's tricky, Mummy. I know, sweetie. Let me help." Sarah remembered the feel of Lily's small warm wrist in her hand. She remembered the smell of her strawberry-scented shampoo. The memory was so clear, so vivid, it was like a punch to the gut. This was no longer just about a piece of metal. It was about that memory. It was about that small, warm wrist. Stephanie O'Connell hadn't just taken a bracelet. She had stolen a life, and now she was dancing on the grave. And Sarah was coming to collect. The victim was no longer a victim. The witness was no longer afraid. The conflict had escalated past the point of no return. It was going to end, one way or another, in a face-to-face confrontation. The predator had become the prey. The city air was thick with exhaust fumes and an arrogant energy that felt alien to Sarah. It was a world of glass towers and valet parking, a universe away from her quiet, grief-stricken street in Northwood. She found Steph's apartment building a monument of gleaming steel and tinted windows that seemed to sneer down at the world. There was a uniformed doorman, a velvet rope, a sense of impenetrable moneyed security. There was no way in. For 2 days, Sarah lived in her car. She parked across the street, watching. She saw Steph leave in the morning for a spin class, dressed in designer athletic wear. She saw her return with shopping bags from stores Sarah couldn't afford to walk past. She saw her meet up with other influencer types, all of them laughing, taking selfies, living their loud, glossy lives, and on Steph's wrist, always, was the glint of silver. Lily's bracelet, a tiny sacred object in a world of profane emptiness. Miller called, his voice frantic. "Sarah, where are you? The pizza, the messages. I know you're upset, but you can't do this. Come home, let me handle it." "Your way isn't working, Frank," Sarah said, her voice flat. "She's wearing it right now." She's laughing. "And she's wearing it. You're going to get a restraining order slapped on you, or worse. She's already painted you as a stalker. What do you think this looks like?" "I don't care what it looks like," Sarah replied, and she meant it. Palm not leaving. She was watching, waiting, for a chance, an opening, though she still didn't know what she would do with it. The futility of her vigil began to set in on the 3rd day. She was running out of money, sleeping into hour increments, surviving on coffee and protein bars. The hope that had burned so brightly was starting to gutter, replaced by a familiar, heavy despair. The plot twist didn't come from a clever piece of detective work. It didn't come from a data subpoena or a recovered video file. It came from the last place Sarah ever expected. Her ex-husband Bot called her that evening. His voice was strange, choked with an emotion she hadn't heard from him in years. "Sarah, I saw it." "Saw what?" she asked, her voice weary. "The news. Someone sent Brenda a link to an article on one of those gossip sites. Influencer starlight Steph accuses grieving mother of harassment. It's all there, Sarah, the doxing, the comments, your picture." He paused, and his breath hitched. They showed a picture of the bracelet. Sarah said nothing, she just waited. "When I saw it, the picture of the bracelet," his voice broke. "Oh, God, Sarah, I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" "I remember something," he said, the words coming out in a painful rush. "From that day, the day Lily disappeared. I never told you, I never told anyone, because it didn't mean anything. It was nothing. But now, seeing that girl's face, Stephanie O'Connell," Sarah sat bolt upright in her car seat. The world outside, the traffic, the city noise, it all faded away. There was only Mark's voice, a ghost coming down the line from a decade away. "What, Mark?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What do you remember?" "I was fixing the sprinkler head by the edge of the lawn, near the woods," he recounted, his voice distant, lost in the memory. "Lily was on her bike in the driveway, and this girl was there, a teenager. She was just standing at the edge of our property line, by the trees. She was smoking a cigarette. She looked angry at the world. You know the look. And Lily rode her bike over to her. A cold dread, slick and oily, washed over Sarah. Lily talked to her. Yeah, just for a minute. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I remember thinking I should probably tell her to come away, not to talk to strangers, but she wasn't a stranger, not really. I'd seen her around town. The O'Connell girl, from the bad side of the tracks. And then my phone rang. It was my boss. He was chewing me out about some report. I turned my back for, I don't know, a minute, maybe two. When I turned back around, the girl was gone, and Lily was riding her bike back toward the house. He took a shaky breath. I didn't think anything of it. Sarah, I swear to God. She came inside a few minutes later, and then she was gone. And in all the chaos, the police, the fear, I forgot. It was a meaningless detail. It got buried. Until now, seeing that girl's face, she's older, but it's her. It's the same girl. The pieces of the puzzle, scattered and meaningless for 12 years, slammed into place. With the force of a physical impact, it wasn't a random abduction by a male predator. It wasn't a tragic accident in the woods. It was her, Stephanie O'Connell. The troubled, resentful teenager. Watching the happy little girl with the perfect life and the shiny new bracelet. Had she admired it? Had Lily, in her sweet, innocent way, shown it to her? Had Stephanie snatched it? And had Lily, feisty, stubborn Lily, tried to get it back? The vision that flashed through Sarah's mind was so horrific, so vivid, she had to stifle a scream. A brief struggle at the edge of the woods, a push, a fall, an accident that became a secret that had to be buried. Along with a small body. The bracelet wasn't a thrift store find, it was a trophy. The one thing she couldn't bring herself to get rid of. The one piece of that perfect life she had coveted and taken. Mark, Sarah said, her voice eerily calm. You have to call Frank. You have to call Detective Miller. Right now, you have to tell him exactly what you just told me. This was it. This was the key. Not a recording, not a diary, a memory. A single, buried memory, unearthed by guilt. And a gossip blog. It changed everything. It wasn't just about a bracelet anymore. It wasn't a missing persons case. It was a homicide investigation. And they had their suspect. The stakes had shifted, dramatically and terrifyingly. This was no longer a personal crusade for a grieving mother. It was a public scandal waiting to explode. A beloved internet celebrity, a self-made millionaire with an army of devoted fans, was about to be accused of the abduction and murder of a 7-year-old girl. The tension, which had been a taut wire for weeks, was now cranked to its absolute breaking point. Sarah looked up at the gleaming soulless tower where Stephanie O'Connell slept. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she was not leaving this city until she saw that girl in handcuffs. The hunter was no longer just watching, she was ready to strike. The warrant was signed before dawn. Mark's testimony, a sworn affidavit delivered over the phone to a judge Miller had woken from his bed, was enough. A credible witness placing the suspect with the victim on the day of the disappearance, combined with the suspect's inexplicable possession of the victim's unique personal property and her subsequent attempts at witness was a chain of evidence, forged in the fires of memory and modern-day hubris. The plan was for a quiet arrest. A knock on the door at 6 a.m. No fuss, no spectacle. But Steph, in her infinite need for an audience, had other plans. At 5:45 a.m., she went live on TikTok. Sarah was in Miller's unmarked car, parked a block away from the apartment building. He had flown in overnight, his face etched with a grim determination she hadn't seen in years. A small team of local detectives were in another vehicle. Ready to move in, Miller was scrolling through his phone when he swore under his breath. "She's live," he said, turning the screen toward Sarah, and there she was. Starlight Steph, in a fluffy white robe, sitting at her vanity, a vast array of makeup brushes and palettes laid out before her. The title of the livestream read, GRWM. Get ready with me, morning manifestation, and positive vibes. Thousands of viewers were already flooding in. The comments section scrolled at an impossible speed. "Okay, my beautiful starlights," Steph said, beaming. Her voice a chipper, melodic chirp. "So, I wanted to start the day with a little chat about rising above negativity. As some of you know, I've been dealing with a little bit of online unpleasantness lately. She dabbed concealer under her eyes, her movements practiced and precise. On her wrist, nestled against the white cuff of her robe, was Lily's bracelet. But you know what? We don't give energy to trolls. We don't give energy to haters. We starve them of our attention, and we focus on our own light. Sarah felt a wave of nausea. The sheer sociopathic audacity of it was breathtaking. The tactical team is moving in now, Miller said, speaking low into a radio. There, in the elevator. On the screen, Steph picked up an eyeshadow brush. So, today's affirmation is, I am safe. I am protected. I attract only love and positivity. I want you all to type it in the comments. Let's manifest it together. Heart emojis and the affirmation filled the feed. I am safe. I am protected. Then, in the background of the video, behind Steph's perfectly lit face, a sound, a faint, but distinct, thud. Steph's eyes flickered for a nanosecond. She faltered, just for a beat. But she recovered instantly. Whoops. Sounds like my neighbor is up early. She laughed, a little too loudly then. A louder sound, a splintering crack, the unmistakable sound of a door being breached. Steph's head whipped around. The bubbly mask disintegrated. Her face, stripped of its filter and its fake smile, was suddenly sharp, feral, and terrified. What the hell? She snapped. The livestream audience was in a frenzy. Oh my God, what was that? Steph, are you okay? Is someone breaking in? From off-camera, a man's voice, hard and official. Police. Stephanie O'Connell. You're under arrest. Steph lunged for her phone, her manicured hands scrambling to end the stream. But she wasn't fast enough. The phone was knocked from its stand, tumbling to the floor. The camera landed on its side, the lens now showing a chaotic, sideways view of the plush pink rug and the bottom of the vanity. But the microphone was still live. The entire confrontation was being broadcast, not as a video, but as a live, unfiltered audio drama to her 1.7 million followers. Get your hands off me. Steph's voice, no longer melodic, was a harsh, panicked shriek. You have no right. What is this about? You're under arrest for the murder of Lily Jensen. A detective's voice boomed. A sound of a struggle, a sharp, metallic click of handcuffs. Lily who? Steph screamed. I don't know any Lily. This is insane. You're being set up by that crazy bitch who's been stalking me. She's obsessed with me. Miller started his car. Let's go, he said, his voice grim. They pulled up to the curb just as the detectives were leading her out of the building's grand entrance. The doorman stood, frozen, his mouth agape. Steph was still in her fluffy white robe, her pink hair a mess, her face pale and contorted with rage. The sight of her, stripped of her glamour, being frog-marched past the velvet rope, was a stunning, jarring tableau. Miller and Sarah got out of the car. Sarah's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand tall. This was the moment. For Lily. As they led Steph past them, her wild eyes scanned the scene, looking for a familiar face, a lawyer, anyone. Then her eyes landed on Sarah. Recognition dawned, and with it, a flash of pure, undiluted hatred. You, she hissed, the word like venom. You did this, you fucking psycho. Sarah didn't flinch. She took a step forward, her hand coming up. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding the small, worn, second-grade school picture of her daughter. She held it up to Steph's face, her hand steady. Her name, Sarah said. Her voice quiet, but carrying with a devastating clarity in the morning air, was Lily. Steph recoiled as if she had been burned. She stared at the gap-toothed, smiling face in the photograph, and for the first time, the fury in her eyes was replaced by something else. A flicker of pure, unadulterated terror. The terror of a ghost she thought she had buried 12 years ago. She began to struggle against the officers. A wild, cornered animal. I don't know her. I never saw her before in my life. But Sarah wasn't finished. Her eyes dropped to Steph's wrist, to the silver bracelet dangling next to the cold steel of the handcuffs. And that, Sarah said, her voice breaking, but filled with the righteous fury of a decade of pain, was hers. It was the final blow. Steph crumpled, the fight going out of her. A low guttural wail escaped her lips, a sound of absolute ruin. The sound of a life built on lies crashing down in a single, public, spectacular moment. And it was all still being broadcast. The audio of her denial, her screams, Sarah's quiet, damning words, it was all streaming live to a stunned, horrified audience. The gossip sites would have a field day. The news channels would be breaking in with the story. Starlight Steph's empire of light and positivity had been exposed. In real time, as a kingdom built on the bones of a murdered child, justice, when it finally came, wasn't delivered in a quiet courtroom. It was a viral, cinematic, and brutally public execution, a shocking and cathartic payoff for 12 years of unbearable silence. The aftermath was not a celebration. There were no victory parades, no triumphant shouts from the rooftops. There was only the quiet, grim work of unearthing the dead. Mark's testimony had given the police a location, the woods bordering their old property, and Stephanie's childhood home, the one she had been so desperate to escape, yielded the final horrifying proof. In a rotted-out crawlspace beneath the back porch, tucked away in a moldy shoebox, police found a collection of small, pathetic treasures. A boy's plastic superhero ring, a girl's glittery barrette, a single, small, scuffed white sneaker, and at the bottom, a child's diary, its pages warped and stained with time and moisture. The diary wasn't Lily's. It belonged to Stephanie. The entries, written in a spiky, angry teenage scrawl, painted a portrait of a deeply disturbed girl, consumed with resentment for the happy, privileged children in her town. She wrote about watching them, about coveting their toys, their clothes, their easy smiles. She called them her little dolls. The bracelet was just the final piece in a collection of stolen innocence. The final entry was dated the day after Lily vanished. The sun isn't smiling anymore. It's quiet now. I have the whole sky. It's mine. Lily's remains were found in a shallow grave not 50 yards from where she had last been seen, just inside the tree line. The search had come so close, so many times, a few more feet, a different search pattern, and they might have found her a decade ago. It was a quiet, haunting torment. The funeral was small. Sarah, Mark, and his new family. Brenda held his hand, her face a mask of sorrow and empathy. Their 2 young sons, confused and restless, stood quietly, holding flowers. Miller was there, standing a respectful distance away, under a grey, weeping sky. The headstone was made of simple white marble. Sarah had debated for weeks about the inscription. What could you possibly say to summarize a life of 7 years and an absence of 12? In the end, she chose the simplest truth. Lily Jensen, beloved daughter. She was the whole sky. Underneath the words, she had the jeweler who designed the original bracelet engraved the 3 small charms, a smiling sun, a crescent moon, and a single 5-pointed star. There was no closure. The word was a lie, a myth for people who had never stood at the grave of their own child. There was no neat ending, no sense of peace. There was only a vast hollow ache where her daughter used to be. The rage that had fueled her for weeks was gone, burned out, leaving behind only the cold ash of grief. Justice had been served. Stephanie O'Connell would spend the rest of her life in a prison cell. Her name, now a byword for monstrous deception, but it didn't bring Lily back. It didn't erase the 12 years of silence. Months later, Sarah sold the house. She couldn't bear the ghosts anymore. She used the money, and a surprising flood of donations that came in after her story went public, to start the Lily Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to providing resources and private investigators for families of missing children. For the cases that had gone cold, the ones the police had given up on. Her new apartment was small, and clean, and quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was no longer the oppressive silence of absence, but the gentle silence of remembrance. Sometimes, in the evenings, she would take out the old camcorder. She'd watch the grainy footage of Lily's 5th birthday party, of a trip to the beach, of a lazy afternoon spent drawing with crayons on the living room floor. She'd listen to her daughter's laughter, a sound she had thought she'd forgotten, and she would allow herself to cry. Not the raw, ragged sobs of despair, but the soft, quiet tears of memory. The bracelet sat in a small velvet-lined box on her bedside table. The police had returned it to her, cleaned and polished. It looked just as it had the day she'd given it to Lily. A perfect silver sky. One evening, as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across her wall, she opened the box. She picked up the bracelet, its weight familiar, its touch a spark against her skin. For a moment, she thought about putting it on, but she couldn't. It wasn't hers. It would forever be Lily's. She held it in her palm, her thumb tracing the outline of the dented sun, the tarnished moon, the sapphire star. The truth had been found. The monster had been caged. But the cost was a hole in the universe that could never be filled. She had her daughter's bracelet back, but she would have traded it. And all the justice in the world, for one more minute with the small warm wrist it was meant for. The lingering emotional echo was not one of victory, but of a profound and unending love.